Disclosures in terms of industry, I don't have anything that's relevant to this talk. My approach disclosure, I am a posterior approach surgeon. That's how I was trained, and that's what I continue to do today. So I'm going to start with a broad opening statement here. The anterior approach, the posterior lateral approach, the direct lateral approach are all very acceptable ways to do a hip replacement. And as Jamie referred to, they're highly successful. Most of the patients do well. There is a ton of literature on this topic, and it can't be covered in 8 to 10 minutes, but I will do my best to give a best overview of some of the studies that I think paint this picture. Much of the evidence is conflicting. What I present, you're going to probably know of a paper that says something different, and that's the way that this evidence goes. There's really not a perfect study that answers this question, so just keep that in mind as we go through. So your overall question that you're keeping in mind, as well as some of the other things that Jamie talked about, but the big question here is, should I be changing my approach to something different? So let's jump right into the registry studies. Now, trials are good, but they're not perfect in terms of what the real world, right? That's more what a registry is representative about. So this is from the Australian registry, 122 roughly 1,000 hips. You can see the delineation of the different subtypes. They're mostly posterior, but a fair bit lateral and anterior. What they looked at and what they showed was that the DA approach was associated with a higher rate of revisions requiring reoperations when they compared it to the posterior lateral approach. So you can see the hazard ratio there, and that was significant, as well as the lateral. And I'll just go through some of these graphs that they showed. So you see this green line here, or green line there, sorry, shows that there's a higher rate of femoral loosening. This is over the course of the first 3 years compared to both the lateral approach as well as the posterior approach. They found that to be significant. There was a higher rate of femoral fracture in the first 3 months, most notably at the beginning. And that was again compared to the posterior and the lateral approach, and was significant. They found a higher rate of infection actually with the posterior lateral and the lateral approach compared to the DA. So something different than some of the advantages maybe that we've talked about before. And again, that was significant. And they found a higher rate of dislocation with the posterior approach compared to the DA and the DL, which again was significant and really not surprising. So they did not factor in surgeon experience though, and implant choice. So there were some holes in this registry. That's what I mean when I say it doesn't really answer all the questions. They only had a short follow-up of about 3 years. So it doesn't really address everything there. You got to take that with a bit of a grain of salt. The registries battle each other too. Depending on what registry you look at, the results are going to be slightly different. So this is an example of the Norwegian registry. They found that the overall revision rates and risk of revision between DA, PL, and DL was actually very similar. They didn't really find a difference, but the specific things, infection was greater in the lateral approach and dislocation was greater in the posterior lateral approach, which again, dislocation is not really surprising, but now we see infection in lateral versus the posterior in the previous registry. And if you go through the other registries, the Swedish, the English, the New Zealand, they all have subtly different findings. None of them really totally agree with each other. This was an article done by some of our Canadian colleagues, Dan Pincus, one of our previous fellows as well. And what they looked at was the anterior approach and how it performs in Ontario. So they found that the DA was associated with a greater risk of surgical complication in the first year, mainly with infection and dislocation requiring revision. They did point out though that the DA had shorter length of stay, and they did this as a propensity match. So they did quite a vigorous match with lots of different covariates here. This is the chart really that they showed with their main finding of the study. So you can see there that the cumulative revision of the anterior approach compared with the lateral or the posterior, which was part of the propensity match. As you can see that it's higher in the anterior approach. They did factor in hospital and surgeon volume in some of their covariates. So they concluded that it's not just a learning curve here. There may be some actual aspects of the surgery which influence things. But they didn't really have any information regarding short-term functional outcomes and pain scores. And that's what I'm going to get into next. Specific implants, again, weren't recorded. The lateral femorocutaneous nerve injury and periprosthetic fracture were not really assessed. and those are two of the things we talk about with the anterior approach. So again, great study, shows some things, but there's, again, some holes in it, which is common with these studies. This is a really commonly quoted study. So this was the Pig Nano paper, as well as Michael Taunton. So this was an RCT, DA versus posterior lateral. They did a really sophisticated functional assessment with sensors that they placed and collected over 2 weeks, 8 weeks, 1 year. They only did high volume surgeons. There was no learning curve cases involved. There were some findings, which is not surprising. The DA took longer. That doesn't surprise really anyone here. They didn't find a difference in the functional outcomes between the approaches, but they weren't powered for that finding. So you have to take that with a bit of a grain of salt. No difference in the radiographic outcomes, and the complications were about the same between the two groups. Different types of complications, but the overall the same. What they did find was that the early functional status within the DA was improved. So walking without a walker, without aid, stopping narcotics, stairs with the aid, walking 6 blocks, those things were improved with the DA compared to the posterior lateral approach. And the other thing is that they found that morphine equivalents were less with the DA compared to the posterior lateral approach. So this suggests that there might be some initial benefit with respect to pain control, as well as the very initial functional recovery. So now we turn to the systematic review. So, there's several trials, prospective studies, and again, you have to take all of them and read all of them and understand what each of them is trying to tell you and what each of them can tell you. So when we look at these systematic reviews, much like the registries, they don't all agree with each other either. So this was the Miller systematic review, looked at the anterior versus posterior, no learning curve cases. They included 13 studies, had a good methodology there. So they found, again, lower pain severity with the DA, with the low heterogeneity of those results. And you can see the forest plot above there. And then lower narcotic usage as well with the DA, with low to moderate heterogeneity. Greater Harris hip scores with the DA through to 90 days. You start getting more heterogeneous there, though, in your results. So taking that with a bit of a grain of salt. And no difference in any one complication. Interestingly, as you can see here, dislocation actually higher in the anterior group, which is not necessarily what you'd be expecting for this, but that's what it showed. But no difference in the overall complications. Another meta-analysis here, this is a more recent one. And in contrast to the one I just showed you, no difference in Harris hip scores at 3, 6, or 12 months, no difference in pain on post-operative one, no difference in post-operative complications. So you're seeing a stark difference to what we just concluded there. And then yet another systematic review. I won't go through all the details just for the sake of time here, but these authors, again, I'm paraphrasing here, but concluding that, due to the available evidence currently now, in this paper, at least, they couldn't conclude superiority of one approach over the other. So that's a common theme that you'll see. So where does that leave us? You're looking at these registry studies, you're looking at the trials, you're looking at everything else, and one tells you one tells you another. And I think that that's an effect of a really highly studied topic. The same thing goes for injections in knees, right? So you can see that with that particular topic, there's tons of literature, but no really clear answer. And I think that's where we are with the approaches, because I don't think there is really a clear answer. And I'm going to get into what I mean by that. There's bias involved in this discussion, no matter which way you cut it. There's going to be patient bias, there's going to be surgeon bias, and in some scenarios, maybe less so in the Canadian system, but there is going to be some industry bias as well. It's there, you have to acknowledge it. So this is a great study, and it was published in the Journal of Arthroplasty, and it actually looked at some of the internet searching for this, for the DA versus the posterior, as well as the lateral approach. So it looked at the AUKUS and basically where the searches went to when you Googled something within this group. So there's 1,855 internet sites, most of them promoting DA, or at least 22.8%, much less so for the other two approaches. A lot of numbers on this slide, but basically what it shows is that there's lots of skewed reporting for the benefits, and you see a lot of the proposed benefit and the things that were mentioned before: less tissue damage, potentially less pain, faster recovery, etc., with very little linking to peer-reviewed articles that either support the risks or the benefits. And really what they concluded was that there was a lot of promotion of the benefits, and it was reported 9 times more than any of the risks, and that was significant. The marketing promotes the benefits, but doesn't really outline the modesty of some of these benefits, right? Because there's a difference between statistically significant and clinically significant. And we're gonna come up to that as well. It may be different with surgeon-specific outcomes. A lot of the papers where you see a clear benefit for the anterior approach are single surgeon studies, right? So what does that necessarily tell you about this? So they conclude that the, again, paraphrasing, but the promise of a quick recovery with the DA might be tied to marketing, which may paint an incomplete picture. And I think this ties to what Lane says at the beginning of patients coming in with this information. That's what they're reading out there. So it's of no surprise to any of us that that's what they're coming in with. I refer to these as Olympic differences, and it goes back to my initial point on one of my first slides here. I think all three approaches are excellent approaches, and it really is the difference between gold and silver here. Does that justify a learning curve? Does that justify exposing patients to potentially increased risk at the beginning when the difference is going to be basically the same in the end? And that's really what the question is that comes down to it. The question may be asked, well, why are we as surgeons so resistant to change? Those of us who have done the lateral and the posterior approach forever, are we basically dinosaurs, hence this picture? Are we thinking in the old ways? Are we not embracing the new literature? And while I think we do have to consider this as a factor, I think we also need to put a lot of stock into our mentors and what they did and what they have success with, right? Because our mentors, at least my mentors, they've been around for a long time. They've been through this iteration a few times with different approaches, and they've stuck with the posterior approach. And these are academic surgeons, and there has to be a reason for that, right? So I think that, our senior colleagues who are sticking to their guns, I think is something to be said for that. So just keep that in mind. But having said that, we should also explore change and assess it properly. Do I think the evidence supports change for those with an established approach? In my opinion, no. I don't think there's enough evidence to show that there's a clear benefit without a risk of complications in the beginning. So I'm going to give you my takeaway here. And I wanted to present you with an overview that had, some of a bit of both, because reality is that I think there's benefits to both approaches. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's nothing good about the anterior approach, because there is. I just don't think the magnitude is such that warrants a switch. So this is a highly studied topic without a clear benefit, I think, past the initial recovery period, which I don't think warrants enough to change the actual approach. There may be less pain and an improved functional recovery with the DA in the post-op period. And I think posterior surgeons probably have to recognize that, because they think that that is likely to be an actual finding. But again, conflicting in the evidence, but it seems to come up more often than not. The overall complications are no different. So, and I think that's what I try to tell my patients when they ask me these questions. You're going to get the overall similar complication rate. It's just the types of complications are going to be different. Posterior lateral is going to have more dislocations. And even with large head sizes, we're seeing less of that with the posterior approach, but it's probably always going to come down to being a little bit higher. The DA is always going to have more lateral femoral cutaneous nerve injuries, maybe fractures and aseptic loosening. We'll see as those registry studies take us out further as to whether or not that's an actual finding. And the lateral approach is going to have patients that limp and chronic abductor problems. They are all going to have each of their own types. So it's really which one do you want to be dealing with. Patient perception matters. And this goes to what Lane was saying before. Their opinion and their perceived opinion of what treatment they're getting has a big factor on this, right? So if you have a patient that is fixed on a DA, they want a DA, their friend had it, everyone else had it, they know of, they should see a surgeon who does that approach, because that's what they're going to be happy with, is getting the approach that they are fixed on, especially if you can't change their minds. Bottom line, I don't think there's a compelling argument to switch from conventional to the DA or any other minimally invasive approach. I think the status quo delivers a highly reproducible operation, great success. I think at the end of the day, you should do what you do and do it well. Thanks, everybody.